The conference room felt like a gladiator's arena, and Willa Winston was determined to walk out victorious. She straightened her blazer, smoothing the navy fabric as the senior partners of Harrington and Associates filed in, their expressions unreadable. This promotion to creative director had been her singular focus for 3 years, ever since she started as a junior copywriter at the prestigious advertising firm. She had sacrificed weekends, relationships, and countless hours of sleep to prove herself worthy. The position was finally within reach, and nothing would stop her from claiming it. "Before we begin," Richard Harrington announced, settling into his leather chair at the head of the table, "I want to introduce you all to Kade Everett. He'll be joining us as we evaluate candidates for the creative director position." Willa's stomach dropped as a man entered the room, and she felt the air shift. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was professionally styled but somehow still looked effortlessly tousled. His charcoal suit fit him perfectly, tailored to highlight an athletic build that suggested he spent as much time in the gym as he did in boardrooms. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a striking green that seemed to assess everything in a single glance. Kade recently sold his digital marketing company for a substantial sum, Richard continued, oblivious to the tension radiating from Willa's side of the table. "He's looking to get back into the creative side of advertising, and we're fortunate he's considering Harrington and Associates." The words hit Willa like a physical blow. This was not just another candidate. This was competition of an entirely different caliber. Kade's gaze swept the room and landed on her. For a moment their eyes locked, and Willa saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition, interest. She could not tell, but she refused to look away first. She had worked too hard to be intimidated now. "Miss Winston," Richard said, pulling her attention back, "why don't you start by presenting your vision for the Henderson campaign?" Willa stood, her heart pounding but her voice steady as she clicked through her presentation. She had spent weeks perfecting this pitch, analyzing every angle of Henderson Hotel's rebranding needs. As she spoke, she could feel Kade's eyes on her, studying her every word and gesture. It should have made her nervous, but instead, it ignited something competitive and fierce inside her. When she finished, the partners nodded approvingly. Richard turned to Kade. "Your thoughts?" Kade rose from his seat with an easy confidence that Willa both admired and resented. "It's a solid approach," he began, his voice deep and measured. "Willa clearly understands the client's needs. However, I think we're missing an opportunity to tap into the experiential aspect of luxury travel." He proceeded to build on her ideas, expanding them in ways that were undeniably brilliant. Willa watched, torn between professional admiration and personal frustration. He was not undermining her work, instead, he was elevating it, which somehow felt worse. It meant he was genuinely talented, not just some rich guy trying to buy his way into a position. The meeting ended with Richard announcing that both Willa and Kade would be working on competing pitches for the Henderson account. Whoever won the client would get the creative director position. As everyone filed out, Willa gathered her materials, her mind already racing with new ideas. She needed to prove she was the better choice, regardless of how much money Kade had in the bank. That was impressive. She looked up to find Kade standing beside her, his expression genuine rather than condescending. "Thank you," she replied coolly, closing her laptop. "You weren't bad yourself." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I meant it. Your consumer psychology insights were spot on. I've reviewed a lot of advertising work over the years, and yours stands out." Willa wanted to dismiss the compliment, to maintain her defensive walls, but something in his tone seemed sincere. "I appreciate that. Though I have to say, bringing in outside competition for an internal promotion is a bit unconventional." "Agreed," Kade said, leaning against the conference table. "For what it's worth, I didn't know I was stepping into someone's promotion track. Richard approached me, said the firm needed fresh perspective. And you need a new challenge after selling your company. Something like that." He studied her with those penetrating green eyes. though I'm realizing this might be more of a challenge than I anticipated. Good, Willa said, meeting his gaze directly. I'd hate for this to be too easy for you, he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face from handsome to something dangerously attractive. I don't think anything about you would be easy, Willa Winston. She was not sure if he was still talking about work, and that uncertainty sent a flutter through her stomach that she firmly ignored. I should get back to my office. I have a pitch to perfect. May the best candidate win, Kade said, extending his hand. Willa shook it, trying to ignore the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his grip. I intend to. Over the next 2 weeks, Willa threw herself into work with single-minded determination. She arrived at the office before sunrise and left long after dark, refining every aspect of her Henderson pitch. The entire firm buzzed with speculation about the competition, and Willa could feel curious eyes following her whenever she passed through the hallways. What made everything more complicated was Kade himself. Despite being rivals, he was unfailingly professional and surprisingly friendly. He would stop by her office to discuss industry trends, always careful not to pry into her specific pitch, but engaged enough to show genuine interest in her perspective. He brought coffee for the entire creative team during late nights, remembered people's names and details about their lives, and offered thoughtful feedback when asked. The staff loved him. Even Willa's closest work friend, Monica, had fallen under his spell. He's not what I expected, Monica admitted one evening as they reviewed layouts. When Richard said millionaire businessman, I pictured some arrogant guy who'd talk down to everyone, but Kade actually listens. Willa made a non-committal sound, not trusting herself to say more. Because Monica was right, and that was the problem. It would be so much easier to hate Kade if he were actually terrible. Instead, she found herself looking forward to their spontaneous conversations, noticed when he was not in the office, and caught herself smiling at his dry humor during team meetings. One night, nearly midnight, Willa was alone in the office, or so she thought. She had been reviewing competitor analysis when frustration got the better of her, and she released a growl of irritation at her computer screen. Rough night, she jumped, turning to find Kade in her doorway, loosening his tie. He looked tired but still put together, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. I didn't think anyone else was here, Willa said, conscious of how she must look with her hair escaping its bun and her third coffee of the evening going cold beside her. I was in the strategy room going over some projections. He gestured to her screen. Want a second pair of eyes? Every instinct told Willa to refuse. This was her competition. But another part of her, the part that valued good work above ego, recognized that she was stuck and could use fresh perspective. Why would you help me? She asked directly. Kade leaned against the doorframe, considering the question. Because regardless of who gets this promotion, Harrington and Associates should deliver the best possible work to the client. That matters more than personal ambition. It was exactly the right answer, the kind of integrity Willa respected above all else. She gestured to the empty chair beside her desk. I'm struggling with the digital integration component. The strategy feels solid, but the execution is not clicking yet. Kade sat down, studying her screen with focused attention. For the next hour, they worked together, building off each other's ideas in a way that felt natural and energizing. Willa found herself laughing at his observations, arguing passionately about design choices, and feeling more creatively fulfilled than she had in months. You're really good at this, she admitted as they finally wrapped up. The creative side, I mean. Richard mentioned you wanted to get back to it. Why did you leave in the first place? Kade's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. My company started as a passion project, a way to help small businesses compete in the digital space. But as we grew and took on investors, it became more about profit margins and scalability than creativity. After my father died 2 years ago, I realized I was spending my life building something that did not actually matter to me anymore. The vulnerability in his admission surprised Willa. "I'm sorry about your father. Thank you." He met her eyes. "He was a carpenter, built custom furniture. Used to tell me that work should leave you satisfied at the end of the day, like you've created something meaningful. I'd lost that feeling." Willa understood more than she wanted to admit. "Is that why you're competing for this position, to get back to meaningful work?" "Partly," Kade said. "Though I'm realizing there might be other reasons I'm glad I took Richard's call." The way he looked at her when he said it made Willa's breath catch. The air between them felt charged with something beyond professional rivalry, something that made her acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how his eyes seemed to darken in the dim office lighting. She stood abruptly, needing distance. "It's late. We should both get some rest before tomorrow's client dinner." Kade rose as well, but he did not move toward the door. "Willa, can I ask you something?" "Maybe," she said warily. "If I were not your competition, would you let yourself be friends with me?" The question was so unexpected, so honest, that Willa did not have a prepared defense. "I don't know," she answered truthfully, "but you are my competition, so it does not really matter." "Doesn't it?" He took a step closer. "Because from where I'm standing, this is starting to matter quite a bit." Willa's heart hammered in her chest. She knew what he was implying, felt the pull of it herself. But she had worked too hard and sacrificed too much to let attraction derail her now. "We should keep things professional," she said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "This promotion is too important." Kade nodded slowly, though something flickered in his expression, disappointment maybe. "You're right, I apologize if I made you uncomfortable." "You didn't," Willa said quickly, then regretted the admission. "I just need to stay focused." "Understood." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it is worth, I think you're going to be brilliant tomorrow. Henderson would be lucky to work with you." After he left, Willa sank back into her chair, her hands shaking slightly. She told herself it was just adrenaline from working late, stress from the competition. But she knew the truth. Kade Everett was becoming more than just a rival, and that terrified her. The Henderson dinner took place at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor. James Henderson, the hotel chain's CEO, was a distinguished man in his 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being difficult to impress. Richard had arranged for both Willa and Kade to attend, positioning it as a chance for the client to meet the creative talent behind the competing pitches. Willa had chosen her outfit carefully, a deep burgundy dress that was professional but striking, paired with minimal jewelry. When she arrived at the restaurant, Kade was already there, devastating in a dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His eyes widened appreciatively when he saw her, and she felt a flush of pleasure that had nothing to do with professional pride. Throughout dinner, Henderson peppered them with questions, testing their knowledge and vision. Willa held her own, articulating her ideas with passion and precision. But she could not help noticing how Kade commanded the conversation, how he had a gift for making the client feel heard while subtly guiding the discussion toward strategic insights. "You two have excellent chemistry," Henderson observed, glancing between them. "Richard, are they working together on this pitch?" "Separate pitches," Richard clarified, "but both exceptional talents." "Pity," Henderson said. "Some of the best campaigns I have seen came from creative partnerships where the team challenged each other to be better." Willa caught Kade's eye across the table, saw her own thoughts reflected in his expression. Together, they would be formidable, but only one of them could win the promotion. As dinner concluded, Henderson stood to take a phone call, and Richard excused himself to speak with the restaurant manager about the bill. Willa found herself momentarily alone with Kade on the outdoor terrace, the city lights glittering across the water. "He's right, you know," Kade said quietly. "We would make a great team." "We're not a team," Willa reminded him, though the words felt hollow. "We're competitors." "Does that mean we cannot acknowledge what is happening here?" Kade turned to face her fully. "Because I'm fairly certain I'm not imagining this." Willa's carefully constructed defenses wavered. "Even if you are not, it doesn't change anything. I've worked toward this promotion for 3 years, Kade. I cannot let anything distract me from that goal. I'm not asking you to, he said, his voice intense. I'm just asking you to acknowledge that there is something between us worth exploring once this competition is over. And if you win, if you take the position I have been working toward, the hurt in her voice surprised even her, Kade's expression softened. Then I would be getting the job but losing something potentially more valuable. Before Willa could respond, Richard and Henderson returned, and the moment shattered. They said their goodbyes, Henderson promising his decision would come after seeing both final pitches the following week. The night before the final presentation, Willa barely slept. She had refined her pitch to perfection, anticipated every possible question, and prepared backup materials for any contingency. But as she stood in her apartment at 2 in the morning, staring at her presentation on the screen, doubt crept in. What if she was not enough? What if 3 years of dedication could not compete with Kade's natural talent and business acumen? What if she lost the promotion and the chance to explore what could happen between them? Her phone buzzed with a text from Kade. Can't sleep either. Want to meet at the pier? She should say no. She should protect herself and maintain her focus. Instead, she grabbed her jacket and headed out into the night. Kade was waiting where the pier extended into the harbor, hands in his pockets, looking out at the dark water. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and the smile that crossed his face made her heart skip. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I just needed to clear my head." "Me too." Willa joined him at the railing, the cool night air sharp against her skin. "Big day tomorrow?" "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment. "Willa, I need to tell you something before we go into that presentation." Her stomach tightened with anxiety. "Okay." "I've been thinking a lot about what I want, what really matters to me." He turned to face her directly. "And I've realized that somewhere along the way, this stopped being about the promotion." "Kade," she started, but he gently touched her hand, silencing her. "Let me finish. You are the most talented, passionate, dedicated person I have ever met. Watching you work, seeing how much you care about every detail, every client, every campaign, it has reminded me why I fell in love with this industry in the first place. And somewhere in these past few weeks, I think I started falling for you too." Willa's breath caught, her heart racing. "You can't say that now, not before tomorrow." "I know the timing is terrible," Kade admitted, "but I couldn't walk into that room without being honest. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that I see you, Willa, not just as competition, but as someone extraordinary." Tears pricked at Willa's eyes and she blinked them back furiously. "This is not fair. I have spent 3 years focused on one goal, and now you are making me feel things that could ruin everything." "Or maybe," Kade said softly, "I'm helping you realize that what you want might have changed." She wanted to argue, to push him away, to protect the dream she had been chasing for so long. But standing there in the moonlight with Kade's green eyes searching hers, Willa felt something shift inside her. The promotion had been her everything because she had nothing else, no one else. She had built her entire identity around being the best, winning the job, and proving her worth through professional achievement. But what if there was more to life than climbing the corporate ladder? What if the sacrifices she had made were not noble but lonely? "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," Kade admitted. He lifted his hand, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I think you might be worth being scared for." When he kissed her, soft and tentative and perfect, Willa stopped thinking about pitches and promotions and professional goals. She kissed him back, pouring 3 years of loneliness and dedication and suppressed longing into the moment. His arms came around her, strong and sure, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Willa felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. They broke apart slowly, foreheads resting together as they caught their breath. "What do we do now?" Willa asked. "We go into tomorrow and both give the best presentations of our careers," Kade said. "And then, regardless of who wins, we figure out what comes next, together." Willa nodded, feeling terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Together. The conference room was packed for the final presentations. The partners sat in judgment along one side of the table while Henderson and his executive team occupied the other. Willa could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders, but when she caught Kade's eye across the room, she found unexpected strength in his encouraging smile. Richard asked Kade to present first. Willa watched as he commanded the room with natural authority, laying out a vision for Henderson Hotels that was innovative and strategic. His presentation built on themes they had discussed during their late-night work session, but he had taken the concepts even further, adding layers of digital integration and experiential marketing that were genuinely impressive. When he finished, the room erupted in appreciative murmurs. Henderson was nodding, clearly pleased. Willa felt a flutter of panic. How could she compete with that? Then it was her turn. She stood, took a deep breath, and began. Willa spoke from her heart as much as her head, weaving together consumer insights with emotional storytelling. She had always been good at understanding what made people connect with brands, and she channeled that gift now, painting a picture of Henderson Hotels not just as a place to stay, but as a portal to meaningful experiences. Her presentation was polished and passionate, backed by solid research but elevated by genuine creativity. As she concluded, she saw respect in Henderson's eyes, admiration in the partners' expressions. And when she looked at Kade, she saw something else entirely, pride and affection that had nothing to do with professional competition. "Thank you both," Henderson said after a long moment of deliberation. "These are two of the finest pitches I have received in 30 years of business." Willa's heart pounded as she waited for the verdict. "The truth is," Henderson continued, "I am having difficulty choosing between you. Each approach has distinct strengths, and I believe my company would benefit from both perspectives." He glanced at Richard. "Is there any way we could have both of these talented individuals lead the account together?" Richard looked surprised but intrigued. "That's certainly unconventional, but given the scope of the Henderson rebranding, a co-director model might actually serve the client better." "Then that's what I'd like to propose," Henderson said firmly. "Co-creative directors, equal authority and compensation, working together on our campaign and future projects." Willa felt dizzy with shock and relief. She had not won, but she had not lost either. She looked at Kade, saw her own surprise mirrored on his face. "Of course," Richard added, "this only works if you two believe you can collaborate effectively." Kade spoke first. "I would be honored to work with Willa. I think we would challenge each other to do our best work." All eyes turned to Willa. A week ago, she might have rejected the idea, too proud to share what she believed should be hers alone. But now, after late nights and honest conversations and a kiss that had changed everything, she understood what mattered. "I accept," she said, meeting Kade's eyes. "I think we could create something remarkable together." The room broke into applause, and Henderson stood to shake both their hands. As the meeting concluded and people filtered out to celebrate, Willa found herself alone with Kade in the emptying conference room. "So," he said, a grin playing at his lips. "Co-workers, co-directors," Willa corrected, unable to suppress her own smile. "Is there a company policy about co-directors dating?" Kade asked, stepping closer. "I have absolutely no idea," Willa admitted, "but I think we should find out." He laughed, pulling her into his arms. "I was terrified I would win and you would hate me, or you would win and feel like you had to choose between the promotion and exploring this." "The universe apparently has a sense of humor," Willa said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Though I have to say, I'm not complaining about the outcome." "Neither am I," Kade murmured before kissing her again, deeper this time, a promise of everything to come. Over the following months, Willa and Kade threw themselves into the Henderson campaign with combined energy and creativity that exceeded even the client's high expectations. They discovered they worked together even better than either had anticipated, pushing each other to think bigger and execute smarter. Their contrasting styles complemented rather than conflicted, Willa's emotional intelligence balanced Kade's strategic thinking, while his business acumen grounded her creative flights. But it was after hours that their real relationship blossomed. Kade took Willa to art galleries and cooking classes, introducing her to experiences beyond the office walls she had lived within for so long. She brought him to local theater productions and dive restaurants, showing him the city she loved from a perspective money could not buy. "You know what's strange?" Willa said one evening as they walked through the park near her apartment, their hands intertwined. "I spent 3 years thinking the promotion was everything, that achieving that goal would make me complete. But I don't think I've ever been happier than I am right now, sharing the position." Kade squeezed her hand. "I spent 2 years after my father died trying to figure out what would make work meaningful again. Turns out it was not just about the creativity, it was about having someone to create with." 6 months into their professional partnership and personal relationship, Richard called them both into his office. Willa felt a familiar flutter of nerves, old habits of anxiety returning. "Relax," Richard said, noting their tension. "This is good news. Henderson is so pleased with your work that they are referring us to 3 other major clients. We're going to need to expand the creative department significantly, and I'd like you two to lead that expansion." "That's incredible," Kade said, glancing at Willa. "There's more," Richard continued. "I'm also prepared to offer you both partner positions. You have proven that your collaborative approach generates exceptional results, and I want to formalize your leadership role in the firm." Willa felt tears spring to her eyes. Partners. It was beyond what she had originally been fighting for, beyond her highest ambitions. "Thank you," she managed. "This means everything." After they left Richard's office, Kade pulled Willa into an empty conference room, shutting the door behind them. "Partners," he said, his eyes shining. "In business and in life." "I like the sound of that," Willa said, but something in Kade's expression made her pause. "What is it?" He reached into his pocket, and Willa's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to wait until tonight, had this whole romantic dinner planned," Kade said, opening the box to reveal a stunning ring, simple and elegant. "But standing here in the place where we met as rivals and became partners, it feels right to ask you now." Willa's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming freely. "Willa Winston, you have made me better at everything: work, life, love. You challenged me to be more than just successful, you inspired me to be meaningful. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you will be by my side for all the days to come. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Willa sobbed, laughing through her tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." Kade slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that spoke of promises and futures and forever. When they finally broke apart, both grinning like fools, Willa could not help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. "A year ago, if someone told me I would be engaged to my competition, I would have thought they were crazy," she said. "A year ago, if someone told me I would find the love of my life while competing for a job, I would have said they were reading too many romance novels," Kade replied. "But here we are, Willa echoed, looking at the ring on her finger, then back at the man who had transformed from rival to partner to forever. "Ready to take on the world together." "Always," Kade promised, sealing the vow with another kiss. They married 8 months later in a ceremony that blended both their styles. Elegant but warm, professional colleagues turned family, celebrating alongside them. Monica served as maid of honor, giving a speech about how she knew they were meant for each other the first time she saw them argue passionately about font choices. Richard toasted them as the finest partnership he had ever witnessed, in business and in life. But Willa's favorite moment came during their first dance, when Kade pulled her close and whispered in her ear, "Thank you for being stubborn enough to compete with me and brave enough to love me. Thank you for being talented enough to challenge me and patient enough to wait for me to realize what mattered most," Willa replied, resting her head against his chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong. 2 years after their wedding, Willa and Kade stood in the newly renovated creative department of Harrington and Associates, watching their team of 15 designers and copywriters collaborate on various campaigns. The expansion had been everything they hoped, attracting top talent and landing prestigious clients, but the most exciting development was not professional. Willa's hand rested on her rounded stomach, 6 months pregnant with their first child. "You think we can do this?" she asked Kade as they observed the organized chaos of deadline day. "Balance everything?" Kade wrapped his arm around her shoulders, his other hand joining hers on her belly. "We've already proven we can build something incredible together. This is just the next chapter." "A baby girl," Willa said softly, still awed by the knowledge. "We're having a daughter. And she's going to have the most brilliant, passionate, dedicated mother," Kade said, kissing her temple. "Though I hope she inherits your stubbornness. It's one of my favorite things about you." "And I hope she inherits your integrity," Willa replied. "Your ability to see what really matters beneath all the noise." Their daughter, Kade Everett, was born on a rainy April morning, small and perfect and absolutely adored. Willa had worried about how she would adjust to motherhood after spending so many years defined by career ambition. But the moment she held Vivienne, she understood that love was not about choosing between priorities, but about expanding capacity. Kade proved to be as dedicated a father as he was a partner and businessman. He took paternity leave, splitting nighttime feedings and diaper changes with Willa. When they both returned to work, they restructured their schedules to ensure Vivienne always had at least one parent present, pioneering a flexible leadership model that Harrington and Associates soon adopted company-wide. "You two have changed this firm in more ways than you probably realize," Richard told them on Vivienne's first birthday, holding the giggling baby while Willa and Kade cut the cake. "You have proven that success does not require sacrifice, that partnerships can be equal, that family and career can coexist. We just wanted to build something meaningful," Kade said, his arm around Willa's waist. "And you have," Richard affirmed, "in every possible way." That night, after guests had left and Vivienne was asleep in her crib, Willa and Kade sat on their back porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Willa asked, "if Henderson had chosen just one of us? If we had let competition drive us apart instead of bringing us together?" "Sometimes," Kade admitted. "But then I look at what we have, this life we have built, and I cannot imagine it any other way. You were always supposed to be my forever, Willa. We just had to fight our way to that realization." Willa leaned into him, feeling the contentment that came from knowing she was exactly where she belonged. "I spent so many years thinking success meant achieving goals alone, proving I was strong enough to need nothing and no one. I was so wrong." "You were not wrong," Kade corrected gently. "You were just learning. We both were. Sometimes the greatest success is finding the person who makes you want to stop competing with the world and start building something better." "I love you," Willa said simply, the words carrying years of gratitude and partnership and devotion. "I love you too," Kade replied, tilting her face up to kiss her softly. "My worthy rival, my equal partner, my forever." Years later, when Vivienne was old enough to understand, she would ask her parents how they met. Willa and Kade would exchange knowing glances before launching into the story of how they started as competitors fighting for the same promotion, how rivalry transformed into respect, how respect blossomed into love. "So you were enemies?" Vivienne would ask, wide-eyed. "We were never enemies," Willa would correct. "We were two people who wanted the same thing, and we were fortunate enough to realize we wanted each other more. And we learned that the best victories are the ones you share," Kade would add, pulling both his girls close. "That competing against someone can teach you what truly matters. That sometimes the person standing in your way is actually the person meant to stand beside you forever." It was a lesson they carried through everything: partnerships at work and in life, raising Vivienne and later her younger brother Maxwell, building Harrington and Associates into one of the most respected advertising firms on the East Coast. Through every challenge and triumph, Willa and Kade faced it together, equal partners in every sense. And on their 20th wedding anniversary, standing in the same conference room where they had once competed against each other, now renamed the Everett Creative Suite in honor of their contributions to the firm, they renewed their vows in front of family, friends, and colleagues who had watched their love story unfold. 20 years ago, I walked into this room as your rival, Kade said, holding both of Willa's hands. I thought I knew what I wanted, what success looked like. But you taught me that the greatest achievement is not winning alone, but finding the person who makes every victory sweeter, every challenge surmountable, every day an adventure worth living. You made me believe in something bigger than ambition, Willa replied, tears of joy streaming down her face. You showed me that strength is not about doing everything alone, but about trusting someone enough to let them see your vulnerabilities, share your burdens, and celebrate your triumphs. You are my greatest collaboration, my favorite creation, my forever love. As they kissed, surrounded by everyone who mattered, Willa felt the same flutter of excitement she had experienced that first night on the pier, when Kade had confessed his feelings and changed everything. Except now that excitement was not tinged with fear, but with profound gratitude for the journey they had shared. From rivalry to partnership to forever, it had been the most unexpected and extraordinary story. And as Willa looked into Kade's eyes, seeing the same devotion and passion that had drawn her from the beginning, she knew their story was far from over. It was still being written, one shared moment at a time, one collaborative decision, one united dream. They had competed for a promotion and found something infinitely more valuable. They had become each other's forever, and that was the greatest victory of all.